Welcome, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Presentation Hell. With us today in Hell, where it's hot, we have with us David McClymont. David is the Chief Executive Officer of the Palm Beach Symphony. He joined in, I think, 2014, like 6 years ago. And at the time, I think y'all were running a deficit. And in that time, he has increased donations, increased subscriptions, and recruited such prestigious corporate sponsors like Gucci, Lamborghini, NetJets. I want all of those things. Um, and in such, he's basically doubled the size of the symphony orchestra. And their annual gala is one of the hottest events in Palm Beach. And, there's a lot of competition for hot events down there in the middle of the winter. So, welcome, David. Thank you for coming. I'm so glad you are here in Hell with us today, Presentation Hell, where it's quite hot. Now, David, I'm really psyched that you're here because I have seen you present. I've seen you in action, and let me tell our listeners, um, David's audience is really intimidating. He gets on a stage in what is it, the Kravitz Center for Performing Arts. That's some 2,000 plus seats, and behind him is an orchestra of world class classical musicians. These are usually Mensa genius type people. And in the audience, in front of him, in front of you, David, um, you got a bunch of seats filled with billionaires and millionaires, and not to sound like Bernie Sanders, but these are also people at the top of their game. Nobody around you suffers fools. They are like the cream of the crop. And there you are, monkey in the middle with the musical geniuses in back of you and the financial wizards in front of you, and they're waiting to hear Mozart, Rachmaninoff. They're waiting to be entertained, and you get up there and you have to talk about administrative events, announcements. We have a cheese and wine meet and greet in 2 weeks. Please come. Donate, 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 give money, buy subscriptions, and you have to pitch and promote, which is probably the most driest thing you can do when everybody just wants to be in the music. So, how the hell do you do it?
That's a great question, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. I'm thrilled. I think there's a sequence of things that go into it, and I always like to use analogies. One of the analogies that I use is it's very similar to the question of how do you cook a dish? You have to have all the right ingredients for a successful dish. So I think public speaking is very similar. If you were going to try to cook lasagna tonight, you'd probably have to go out and get pasta and meat and sauce and cheese, and those would be the ingredients to cook a successful lasagna. Public speaking is very similar. So it starts with knowing your audience. And I know that everybody says this, but I can't emphasize that enough. Every time that I public speak, I try to learn as much as I can about the audience, and then I try to seek first to understand, then to be understood. And that's a principle that Stephen Covey talks about in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Really understand what are they wanting to hear, and how do you deliver that in such a way to where it will be informative, educational, or entertaining. The other thing that I think is really important is practice. And it's just like anything. So I enjoy playing golf. If I want to go out and play golf on a weekend, then I have to work at the game during the week. So that when I finally go play, which is being on stage on the golf course, then I can expect to have refined some of the things within my game. Public speaking is very similar. You have to practice, use every single opportunity you have to speak, whether that be at a Rotary Club breakfast, whether that be to your staff, whether it be making a presentation. Use it as an opportunity. Second thing I will say is record yourself. I like to record myself both from an audible standpoint without video so that I can hear my inflection, I can hear my tone, I can hear cadence, and I can really start to micro-analyze what I sound like to the people that I'm speaking in front of so that I can then better improve some of the things that are areas of opportunities. Third, video yourself. Because just as good as it will be to have a nice tone that is well received for the people that you're speaking to, look at what your facial cues look like, your body language. Is your body language strong? Are your shoulders back? Or are they crunched forward? We all have natural body language that we don't realize until you've actually videoed yourself. The last thing I will say is I try to frame things, and I rarely will speak with a script. And part of why I do that is because I would rather put 4 or 5 bullets that I have to hit and then allow myself to very naturally, as we're talking right now, I don't have a script right now for the question that you posed, be able to talk about it in a very natural tone. So when you stand on the Kravis Center stage in front of 2,200 people, it's very similar to us talking right now because you're just using those bullets of 4 or 5 points that you have to hit. Welcome, we're so glad you're here. Number two, as you said, we have a particular event that's coming up. Here's the attribute as to why I think it's important that we talk about that particular event. It's another really important thing, I think, too, with public speaking. You have to demonstrate the attribute. Why are you sharing the things that are coming out of your mouth? What is the equation? What's the yield? As to why it's important you should tell those people. Well, obviously for us, when we're standing on stage and we're speaking about the things that we're doing, the yield is that obviously with more support, we can make more impact. And it's a pretty direct correlation of impact meets support. I know that was a long-winded way of explaining how I speak in front of the 2,200, as you said, very sophisticated, very educated people, and then I have 80 or 90 geniuses
Yeah.
behind me, so it is a little
So
bit
let me
daunting at
sum that
times.
up. You practice, you give yourself feedback, you learn and understand your audience, and you just focus on a couple of points and just make a conversation. You're not making a speech, you're making a conversation that you've practiced before you got up there.
Absolutely. Now, there are times that I will have to go off of a script. For example, the gala. So the gala is a pretty big program, and we'll have talking points and we'll have a run of show, and I'll have to speak off of that script. But as it relates to that, then I will practice that script so much that it sounds just like we're talking now because there's nothing worse than we all sit in front of a public speaker and you can absolutely tell that they're rehearsing this speech and they're trying to hit their marks. There's nothing worse. So I also think that goes to making sure that you talk in your natural cadence. As I'm talking right now, this is my cadence. This is the way that I normally speak. I speak this way to my kids, I speak this way to my team members. So when you're making that presentation, make sure that you're speaking in that same speed. That's another thing that I think is important and something I've had to work on, and it's still a continual progress for me. I have a tendency to speak a little too fast and everybody tells me that. So I've had to work on not sounding like the Christie's auctioneer. You know, we've got this particular diamond and it's going for 1 million. Raise the bid. Blah, blah, blah. Something I've had to work on, but
That's actually an
speak in your
interesting
cadence,
point.
speak in your
Let's
tone.
explore that a little bit more because today more and more of us in business in sales we're on Zoom, we're remote, and I've noticed myself after a day of doing sales meetings and Zoom calls, um, my throat is killing me. It's dry, and without realizing it, you tend to shout more and maybe you're not shouting, but you are talking louder. You're trying to project more to make sure that everyone hears you through your laptop microphone. And the other side of that is the when you're on one of those Zoom calls and there's 10 other people or 5 other people, you really don't get body language even though you can see a pixelated face. So no one knows when there's a break to speak or when you can interject, and people start talking over each other and then they start shouting more. And I think you don't even realize it. So that's something I think for our listeners to be very conscious of. And I like that you said just speak in your normal cadence. You be you in a way. Um, I, I think that's great. It's great advice.
Absolutely. And you brought up something that's very interesting too. I have had some great mentors along the way that have been excellent public speakers, and what I have learned is that the most powerful way to speak is actually to speak very quietly. Because when you speak very quietly, then
You're
people really pay
forcing them.
attention to what you're saying.
You're
And there's this
forcing them to
fascinating
listen
thing,
to you.
right?
I heard that Anna Wintour does that.
Right. Right. So a lot of times I will do that. Exactly. A lot of times I will do that on the Kravis Center stage, that when I really want to deliver something that's really important, I will
That's
almost
sneaky. I
whisper
like
it.
it.
But that goes to back to what we talked about with tone, cadence, inflection. Those are probably one of the most important things you could look at in public
Right.
speaking. But again, doing it in your natural way. It has to be. And then the biggest component in all of this that cannot be created, it has to be genuine, is passion. So if there's one thing that I'm able to deliver, it's passion. So if I get behind something and I really believe in it, which I do the Palm Beach Symphony, then it just pours out of my pores. It exudes out of my
And you
pores,
can't
and
fake
that
that.
comes across very natural. So I do think when you're speaking about something, you can't fake that. No. So try to be passionate about whatever you're talking about. Even if it's something you're not passionate about, maybe do enough research on it so that you then become educated to the point where you respect it enough to be passionate about it. You don't have to like and love everything you talk about, but try to find some level of passion within your presentation so when you're
Yeah.
talking, people can
And
sense that
even
you're
I think when
passionate
it's
about it.
hard, if let's say, it's another work demo or another work meeting, to your point, you can always find something that you really like. And that will elevate your passion. That will get you excited about it. It's like you can always find something in a person to like about them. Same thing with work, same thing with things, same thing with presentations and topic. If you look hard enough, you will find the good and focus on the good. And people respond to good.
I agree, and that's why I think attributes are so important. I had the pleasure of going to Purdue to get a Six Sigma certification, and our thesis was on the Toyota way. And I thought it was so fascinating when you studied Toyota and how Toyota became the most successful car manufacturer at a particular period of time. The culture that Toyota created was that every single team member at Toyota was part of an attribute. And I'll give you a case in point. The tire person that put on all the tires all day long, that's all they did was assemble tires, was not a tire assembly person. Their title was life saver. Because now the paradigm that they've created with that person is that your job, your ability to put those tires on perfectly is literally going to save a life. So it's a paradigm shift. And it's to your point about attributes. If you're making a presentation and in that presentation is something that's a little mundane, if you can try to get to the yield of making this Excel presentation, Excel presentations can be a little bit mundane, let's say. But if you understand that the purpose of making this Excel presentation is that we'll orchestrate everybody on the team to understand the sales goals, that will then yield into us having a better year, better profits, better impact, more opportunity for raises, promotions, et cetera, et cetera. So I really try to focus on attributes, and I would encourage everybody else that makes presentations, especially when it's something that might not seem very exciting, to look at the
And
attributes
when you
of
say
that presentation.
attributes, you mean the big picture, the ultimate benefit, the end goal, why what you're doing has meaning long term. It's fabulous. That's great.
Exactly. Yeah, outcomes are measures. What's the outcome or measure of that
That's actually,
presentation?
yeah, I
Down the
actually, now that you
road.
mention it, apply that in just in my business where it can be the same thing day in and day out, growing a tech SaaS company, the same demos, the same meetings, the same conversations, and I'm like, but long term, I'm building a business that will support my family and it's mine and my shareholders. So that's pretty cool. And that keeps me going. You are absolutely right. It's great advice. So can I shift to a little personal? Tell us, what was your worst presentation that you ever gave that you just like bombed? And it could be last week, it could be 20 years ago. What was the that one time where you're just like, oh my god, this was the most terrible thing I've ever done in my life? Maybe it wasn't. It's just a presentation. Keep it in perspective.
You probably won't like this answer, but I'm going to tell you a principle, and my principle is the windshield
Ah,
to the rearview mirror. And the ratio is that you are supposed to use your experiences in direct proportion. So think about the size of the windshield in relation to the rearview mirror. We use the rearview mirror at about 10 to 20% to reflect on areas of opportunity so we can fail forward. But then we spend 80% looking through the windshield. I say that not to sidestep what was my worst presentation. Of course, I've had many presentations that could have gone better, but I can tell you that I live by the principle of the 80-20 rule with the windshield to the rearview mirror proportion. Very much like Jack Nicklaus talked about. They would ask Jack Nicklaus about the worst shot he ever hit, and he would say, I forgot about it. I moved on to the best shot that I hit and hitting another good shot. So I really try to focus. Of course, I'll do debriefs and go back and look at what I like to call areas of opportunity. And I use that word because I think it's a very strong word. Even within my team, we don't use the word weaknesses, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Even within a team member, this is their weakness. No, it's not a weakness. It's an area of opportunity. So, of course, I've had presentations that could have gone better, and I've learned from those presentations, but I really try to focus
Well,
on
I think
moving
you just took
forward.
us from presentation hell to presentation heaven. You are an optimist. That's so refreshing. Thank you.
Guilty as accused.
All right, so I'm just going to sum up some your tips for our audience if we got it right, or you can. One, know your audience, do your research. Two, look at the positive attribute, the silver lining in whatever it is you're doing. Three, practice. Four, practice. Five, practice. And give yourself feedback as you practice. Do it in front of a mirror, record yourself, be prepared. Be prepared and be positive. And that's David McClymont of the Palm Beach Symphony Orchestra. Thank you so much.